Hello, Tara.
Hey there.
Hey, how's it going today?
Good.
Awesome. So just kind of starting out, how did you first get into voice acting?
Well, I knew when I was 4 or 5 years old that I wanted to be a singer, actress, dancer, and I always did funny voices and performing. I used to take my mom's hand when I was 6 and say, "Let's pretend we're from England and we go in this store," or
right.
And I started professionally performing when I was 13, and my first auditions were a musical theater show, which I did. I did The Music Man, and I also did an on-camera show with Mr. T, and then I did Hello Kitty. It was just another audition. So I actually didn't know that was going to be my primary, but I grew up in Toronto, and there was so many great opportunities to really build a nice resume there. I had over 20 animated series to my name before I moved here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And stuff that you guys would know, Beetlejuice, Care Bears, My Pet Monster, a lot of Runaway production.
Absolutely. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So was your very first Hello Kitty? Your very first job?
Uh-huh.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And it was fun because I actually grew up in a toy store and a candy store, and my parents were the first to import Hello Kitty merch to Canada, and so we had a whole basement of Hello Kitty stuff, and my dad had the big giant furry Hello Kitty suit. So I saw that at 5 and thought that's so great, and had all the toys, and then at 13 for that to be my first gig, that was kind of cool.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. So the piece itself that I'm working on is kind of focused on, voice acting as an art form. I guess to kind of get into that, what do you think it makes it so different from any other kind of form of art or acting?
Well, it is in the acting category, and I think people make the mistake that if they have a funny-sounding voice, they can succeed. Mm-hmm. And it's really not about having a unique voice, although that can sustain for a little bit. The people that really sustain long voiceover careers are primarily actors that have had acting training, and I always tell people when they're getting started to take as many different kinds of classes as you can so you can put them in your bag of tricks. I did Second City in Canada, as well as so many different scene study classes, and I've been taking singing lessons since I was very young. So you learn what your voice can do, and you know what acting beats are, and you're able to improv in the studio, because many times when you're performing in a show, they'll say, now we want the girl to be from Texas, now we want older, younger, now we want it to be a boy. Can you make up something that she'd say in this scenario? So improv really comes in handy. Most people doing a lot of voiceover work have come from Second City or different improv schools, and I always suggest people to take all kinds of acting classes, and truthfully it differs the same way you'd ask a tap dancer if they can do ballet. You know what I mean? It's those are two different styles of dance. So animation voiceover is a different style of acting than on camera, than theater, than even commercial voiceover. Sometimes it's a specific skill that you either have or you don't, and you certainly can improve with experience. And I think the number one thing is being confident and not being afraid to look silly, and really closing your eyes and imagining you're these characters that if you were doing an on-camera show would be apparent to the audience. If the line is "whoa," in the stage directions it says, your character sees a hot guy or is falling off a cliff, those are going to be two different whoas.
Right.
As a voiceover actor, you learn to manipulate your voice to portray what the acting beat would see if it were an on-camera job. So most people in animation have done on-camera, so they can do both, but sometimes when someone's a huge superstar that's never done animation and they come into the studio, they're a little intimidated by someone like a Jim Cummings or Tom Kenny that's doing a multiple amount of different characters and voices at the drop of a hat, and they're like, whoa, because it's just not a world that they're expertise in or that they do all the time. Certainly when you're doing anything all the time, you're going to be better at it.
Definitely. Well, yeah, when I was talking to, just speaking of that improv, when I was talking to Jim, he said, they'd be in on Darkwing Duck, and they'd just say, well, I know he's going to improv the line, so I'm just going to have, blank here, and then he'd kind of just improv something up really quick, and it seems like that really is just, such a gigantic part of it. That's really cool.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, what do you think is the biggest misconception about being a voice actor?
Well, like I said before, a lot of people say to me, oh, I really want to get into voiceover, and they talk like this.
Right.
Like, well, it's not just about having a crazy-sounding voice. It's really about being a good actor and being versatile and being able to manipulate your voice and also creating a character. When you're given an audition, you have a drawing of the character, and you have what they call sides, which is a portion of the script to audition with, and they'll give you sometimes a character Bible. You, as a performer, have to imagine how this person functions in their world. And so to just kind of assume that a role is great just because someone's standing and reading at a microphone is not true. The people that are doing really well have become these characters and create different ways of saying things, or a unique lisp or way of pronouncing a word that you may not have thought of. I just did Rob Paulson's podcast, and I was complimenting him on his character on Fairly Odd Parents. Nobody told him to pronounce, he would say things on an odd syllable, and it was just like a choice that became really funny. So
right.
I think that that's really important. And I think the other thing people... it's funny, the fans online really get it, but often studio heads or maybe the average parent film goer doesn't really know, but the fans for these shows are really huge. When they're loyal to a voice and an actor and a character, they're really attached to them. So when a new studio head comes aboard or a new showrunner says, hey, let's try new voices, it really pisses off the fan base.
Right.
So I think they don't realize how beloved these characters become, and since the internet is so easy to find out who voices what, how beloved those voice actors are. So I think that's the big misconception.
Absolutely. And kind of speaking of that, you're forming a voice for the character. This is kind of random. I remember this interview I watched with the kind of cast of Teen Titans, and you were talking about how you kind of mixed together a few different things for the voice of Raven. I think you had you said you had a bass, and then you kind of graveled it up a little bit.
Yeah, well, because at the time I was doing maybe 3 other characters that all in the character description would sound like Raven, like depressed teenager, kind of dark, whatever it was. And I was actually doing Batgirl for them at the time, so I couldn't just do my own voice. Batgirl's probably the closest thing to my own voice. So I sort of didn't know where to go to make her sound unique. And then I had finished the audition just sort of playing a little bit, and then I went and I said to the director, I've got one more idea that I could try, and they really liked that sort of guttural role that I threw in. It was actually kind of a last-minute idea. Yeah,
that's really cool. And kind of moving on, what do you think is the most difficult part of voice acting or kind of being a voice actor?
Well, I'd say the most difficult thing is not... this is going to come off weird, but for me, vocally, it's vocally taxing to do a video game where you're screaming death sounds for 4 hours, because, when you're doing an animated series, there's a cast record, so you get a little break in between you having to speak. But when you're doing a video game, you're typically by yourself. So, and sometimes they won't hire a voice director, and it'll just be, a writer on the game saying, hey, can you give us 50 more death sounds? And well, then I won't be able to do any other jobs this week. Right. So that can be challenging. And I think the hardest part emotionally is when you're replaced on something, or for instance, we've been doing the Teen Titans together for something like 17 years, and we started out doing it serious, and now we're doing this silly iteration, and sometimes they'll do something and not use us, and that makes us so sad, because like I said, once you create a character, they live in your head, and it's like, wait, that's me. Right. I think that's probably the hardest part emotionally, is letting go of a role that you really helped bring to life and bring to the world.
That must be tough, especially with Teen Titans, because all of those voices I don't see any of those characters with any other voices anymore, because everyone just fits their roles.
Powerpuff was a tough one.
I'm sorry?
Powerpuff Girls, we really created those voices, So it's there's, like I said before, certain ways of pronouncing things that just wouldn't have existed without us. So it's you create these, E.G. once said it's like you have a kid and then you have to give your kid away for someone else to raise.
Right.
So so. But the fans are so great at letting us know how. And by the way, we never get pissed off at the other actors because it's a gig. You know, I certainly wasn't the first person to play Harley. I wasn't the first Batgirl, so it's not the actor's fault. But once you like are a role and it's recognized that you're that role, and then there's a replacement for no reason, or just let's just try this.
Right.
If an actor says that doesn't hurt their feelings, they're completely lying.
Right. Well, it's difficult because, like, you know, when I think of you, you know, I think of Bubbles, and I think of, you know, that's one of the, like, probably top 5 voices that I think of that you do. Well, kind of actually along those lines, throughout your career, has there been one character that's been your absolute favorite to perform?
Well, I loved doing Fairly Odd Parents, Teen Titans. We was so much fun together. Powerpuff Girls, we had so much fun together. But when people ask what your favorite role was, I always say Melody from The Little Mermaid 2, because as a young girl, I loved the first one, and I still have like the poster hanging in my childhood bedroom in Toronto. So to get to play her daughter and sing with her in the studio, was pretty fantastic. Yeah,
that's awesome. That's kind of on the other hand, is there one character that you've never voiced before that you would want to do?
Well, my other answer to that is I would have liked to have been one of the Simpsons, because that's a crazy picture. They've been around a long time.
Absolutely. Has there one Simpsons character you think you'd be kind of perfect for the role of?
I mean, had I auditioned, maybe one of the kids, but if they were going to do something now, it'd be fun to just sort of come on board as a new character. But once like there's an established show like Fairly Odd Parents or Teen Titans, they don't have that many guest characters, because most of us are versatile and can do a bunch of different voices and a bunch of different characters, and the SAG scale rate is, you know, they can pay you for up to 3 different characters. So it makes sense for them to bring in someone that can do 3 different roles as opposed to, you know, someone that can only do one part.
Right. Well, and especially something like The Simpsons, you know, they have pretty much 3 people doing so many of the voices.
Yeah, that's a perfect example.
Definitely. Well, kind of one last question. Do you have any advice you'd give to kind of aspiring voice actors and actresses?
Yeah, I always tell people to take as many acting classes as they can, singing lessons, and when they finally feel ready, get into an acting class for animation or for a commercial, whatever they want to kind of focus on, but a really reputable one. Get some studio time and time behind the microphone so you're not so nervous when you get into a studio. And then when they tell you you're ready, you make a demo, submit that to your local agencies, but never ever pay for an audition. These companies now are infuriating me that are promising people careers, and if you pay to audition, and these kids are like giving up their life savings for this chance at this dream, and there's not one voiceover celebrity I can tell you about that ever went that route, that ever paid to audition. You pay your agent a commission of what they book you on. So I get really mad when I see that, because it's just taking advantage of hopefuls. And the other thing is, the truth is, it's a very small knit industry. It's not open arms. Not just anyone, even if they're insanely talented, is going to get a shot. Everything in Hollywood is timing. So when people say, yeah, give me your $1,000 for a demo reel and pay to do these auditions, and I just, it makes me so mad. Because the truth is, you have to be pretty extraordinary, and then with that, it's got to be right timing.
Definitely, and that's kind of one of those just kind of darker sides of of that business. I think with all of Hollywood too.
Yeah,
that probably ends
it doesn't matter how badly you want to work. Sometimes it doesn't matter how talented you are.
Well, I'm in a band, and we I remember early on there were so many gigs that said, oh, you just have to pay a certain amount or sell a certain amount of tickets first, and it was kind of all these same companies that were pretty much doing the same thing, just kind of exploiting like younger new bands, and
because they know how badly you want it.
Yeah. It's I'm also not too happy about it.
Yeah.
Well, hey, thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview. I've been really excited to kind of work on this piece, because voice acting has always been something I've been kind of fascinated with, and I've always thought, it's something that a lot of people don't really know too much about outside of the basics. So, yeah, I've been really excited for it. I do have one other question, because I did ask this for Jim as well. I asked him to say the name of the magazine in his Robotnik voice, because we love his Robotnik voice around here. Would you mind saying it in, I don't know, whatever your favorite is, Raven or Bubbles or whatever you'd like?
And what do you want me to say?
Just maybe check out Innovation and Tech Today.
Okay, ready?
Yep.
Check out Innovation and Tech Today.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
All right. Have a great rest of the day, Tara.
You too.
All right.